Hello, my friends. We're discussing e-learning and instructional design portfolios today. And one of the biggest roadblocks that people usually face when it comes to creating their portfolio website is deciding which projects to even include on it in the first place. So in this video, we'll take a look at how to identify some really strong portfolio project ideas and how to present them in the best light on your portfolio so that they can help you land instructional design opportunities. So let's dive into it. Okay, so you've probably heard by now about how important it is to have a portfolio if you're looking for e-learning or instructional design opportunities. But the next question is always, okay, what projects do I actually include in my portfolio? I know what skills I need to learn, but how do I translate that into an effective portfolio project? So this video should help with that. I'm going to share some general recommendations for portfolio projects. We'll also get into identifying a strong flagship project idea, which you've probably heard me speak about if you've been a fan of the channel for a while. We'll take a look at how to identify good supporting projects, and we'll even discuss doing your process write-ups that you'll feature on your portfolio site as well. So this should be a pretty comprehensive video, and we will dive right into it. So let's start off by discussing the purpose of the projects, right? What are we even designing these projects for? So the main thing is we want to show potential employers and potential clients, we want to show off your full command of the instructional design process to them. So we want to check a lot of the right boxes to make you eligible for a pretty decent array of instructional design opportunities. We also want to highlight your attention in detail. This is something that a lot of hiring managers and potential clients will look for. If they're finding spelling errors or programming errors, it's really not going to be a good look for you. So that's something else to keep in mind. Not all portfolios are created equally. And if your portfolio does have glaring errors or mistakes, or the projects are kind of sloppy, it's going to do more harm than good. So we want to make sure we're doing this right. We also want to show that you can solve real world problems with instructional design. When we surveyed instructional design hiring managers, this is one of the biggest gaps. And this is a very in-demand skill set for instructional designers, and it really does make a difference in the job market. We also want to demonstrate you have the in-demand tech skills. So with the shift to remote, obviously the technical skills are more important. If you are trying to land a corporate ID role and you don't have anything created with Articulate Storyline or a very similar authoring tool, it's probably going to be quite difficult for you to land opportunities. And there are exceptions to that, of course, but if you're like, I want to land a corporate ID role and I'm okay using the tech skills, you should show them off in your portfolio. And then, of course, the other opportunity with these projects is to highlight who you are, what you're interested in, and what you're most passionate about, right? Each project, and we'll get into this more like choosing the topics, but projects are an opportunity. They're like conversation points, right? These are things that you'll be discussing in interviews. So it's better to choose things that you have expertise in or that you're passionate about, because it can lead into a deeper conversation that lets people get to know you a bit better. So we'll explore all of this in more detail. Here are some general recommendations for you. So some of you may already have existing projects that you've done for your current employer as an instructional designer, or that you've done for a school as a teacher. So this is a common question, right? How do I include the projects I've already been working on? The problem with this is that many projects are confidential. You've probably signed NDAs or confidentiality agreements, so it can be tricky including these projects on your site. I did include a video about this in more detail, but the general recommendation is just create new projects. So these existing projects, they may not be for adults, which probably isn't a good idea unless you particularly want to be an instructional designer who creates learning materials for children. I don't know of many opportunities like that, but I'm sure they're out there. And these existing projects may not use the in-demand tech skills. So again, a lot of people may say, yeah, I'm going to just include these projects I've done in PowerPoint, or I've made these videos, but they don't have any self-paced e-learning with Storyline. That's a mistake, and you're going to have a harder time on the job market without those skills in your portfolio. So you can include a real project, right? This can be helpful just to show, yes, this person has worked on a real world instructional design project. One project like that is nice in your portfolio out of like maybe 3, but this isn't really a must-have. This isn't essential. So you can include the project if you get permission, maybe include some screenshots, maybe talk about your process a bit, but I wouldn't make this like the first project on your site, because you can do something much stronger for the current market. as a concept project, which we'll get into soon. Okay, corporate projects only. This is another really common misconception. The skill set and process are what's important, not the topic. Okay, so you want to demonstrate that you have the skills and that you can follow a process to bring a project through from beginning to end. It doesn't matter if you have a corporate topic, right? A lot of these blend together, and if you do something that is a bit more unique and based on your own expertise, that leads to a much more effective portfolio project. So this solution can be for teachers, plumbers, salespeople, corporate employees, right? It can be for corporate employees or baristas. It really does not need to be for general office employee. The one caveat here is it is probably a good idea to design a solution for adults, especially if you are a teacher, because there is this stigma, I guess I would say, that, oh, you've been designing learning for students or for children, you don't know how to design learning for adults. I don't think that's really valid. Maybe there are some differences, but most of these ID jobs are designing learning experiences for adults, so it's good to at least make sure you're doing that in your portfolio. And there are exceptions, right? You don't have to do that. This is just a general recommendation. So another caveat here is it is probably a good idea to include a variety of topics unless you already know you'd like to serve a particular niche. So you might be really passionate about helping teachers, but if you have all three of your portfolio projects as solutions for other teachers, it may be sending people a message that, okay, this person must want to work with teachers because this is what all of their projects are for. But if you have one project for teachers, one project for baristas, and one project for like carpenters or something, it's going to show off a pretty good range. And then if someone's looking at your site, they'll say, oh yeah, they can adapt pretty well to different audiences. I'm sure they could do the same for our audience, even if it doesn't check that box exactly. But if you do know, yeah, I have experience in a particular industry and I really want to only get an ID job doing work in that industry, it may make sense to make all of your projects related to that industry or focused on that topic. Just something to keep in mind about the message you're sending with the topics you choose for these projects. Another recommendation here, general recommendation, is don't get too technical with your project ideas. So we want these projects to be accessible to a general audience, assuming that you want to land a general corporate ID role or a variety of freelance projects. Okay, so try to avoid jargon or solutions for highly technical roles. There are some caveats here, but generally, if we're confusing people who are on your portfolio website, it's not going to be a good look. Okay, so maybe this is a good solution for these like computer scientists. And I think you can make projects work like that as long as the way that you're telling their story is very simple and easy to understand for like a general hiring manager or recruiter or project manager for a different type of team or project. But if like you're bringing us into the project and it's really technical, we're probably going to get lost and not be super engaged. So the only exception here is if you'd like to work in that niche. So if the people who are evaluating your site and your projects will understand the language you're using, like if you're like, okay, I only want to work on these like technical computer science projects and these managers on those teams are reviewing your work, that can make sense. That could actually differentiate you. It could show this person embraces these technical concepts. We know what they're talking about. They're doing a great job here. They clearly have this understanding and this subject matter expertise. This sets them way apart from the competition. But if that's not you, if you just want to land an ID role and you're not really concerned about what kind of team or what kind of subject matter you're working with, try to keep it kind of simple. The best projects are where a hiring manager, or a potential client, when they're going through your portfolio, they're actually learning something and they actually feel engaged. Because when they have that feeling and they're like, oh, I'm taking away something from this, I'm engaged in this, then they can imagine how, wow, they can actually design experiences like this for our audience, and we see the power in that. So if you have something really technical, they're probably going to be feeling more confused than engaged, and they're probably not going to be learning a ton because they might not have the necessary background knowledge. So something to keep in mind. Portfolio projects might be for this particular audience who have the technical skills, but the people reviewing your portfolio, that's the secondary audience we need to keep in mind when we're working on portfolio projects. It's the two audiences. The one who the project is actually for and, the audience who's reviewing your work. Okay. So this is another option. You can show how you would convert technical content into something that's easy to follow. If you are good at that, maybe you have a technical writing background, or you do have these like scientific degrees and you are passionate about working with technical content, you can show that off on your portfolio site. Show, look, here's this really technical document we started with. Here is how we turned it into this very user-friendly, conversational, easy to consume learning experience. A project like that will go a long way, but it's just making sure it's not confusing. Okay, my last general recommendation here is to embrace concept projects. And I think the first time I heard this term used, a concept project, is from Kath Ellis. When I was talking to Kath about updating my portfolio, what kind of project should I create? Kath Ellis, if you don't know who she is, she's like one of the most inspirational e-learning designers out there. So check out her site if you haven't already. It's kathellis.com. One of my biggest inspirations since I set foot in this field. But this idea, this concept project idea, I've run with it. I've helped a lot of people implement this, and it is very, very effective. So what we're doing here with this concept project is showing how we would solve a real world problem for a client if they were to come to you, right? So we're identifying this real world problem that could be solved with instructional design, and then we're designing and developing the solution, even if no one's paying us to. We're just imagining someone is, and then we'll talk about that process we use. So then when other clients or other potential employers are reviewing our project, they say, oh wow, this person knows their stuff. Like they really used a full ID process to bring this to life. It doesn't really matter whether or not they were paid to do it or not. They were very thorough about this. So that's the idea. We don't need to wait around for someone to come to us and pay us. We can actually design a solution to a problem that we identify. And we're about to get into how to do that. It's the same process we teach in the bootcamp. And that's when you'll want to have out your notebook, or at least watch through this again if you want, but you should be able to get a pretty good project idea from the process we're going to teach here. Okay, real clients, they may slow you down and request changes that make the project less engaging. So that's another benefit of concept projects. Sometimes projects like this make for even better portfolio projects because you can use your own process. You can focus on making it as engaging as possible versus clients who may be really pushing, oh, make sure we include this information, make sure we include these clauses from our policy. It can get less engaging very quickly if you are accommodating all of those requests. So it's best to kind of just remove this from the equation sometimes, at least when it comes to your own portfolio. And again, it couldn't hurt to have an example of a real project on your site, but this is not required. And if you were to do this, I would include it as project number like 2 or 3 and use this flagship project process we're about to get into as the first featured project on your site. So let's get into it. The flagship project, this is probably not new to a lot of you. But if it is, don't worry, there's a lot of other content on this channel to help you out with this. But we're going to dive deep into how to identify this idea here. Again, this is the same process we teach in my bootcamp, and here it is for free on YouTube. Okay, so the flagship project, this is where we identify a worthwhile problem that can be solved with a story-driven, scenario-based e-learning solution. Okay, and this is key here. This isn't an info dump solution. It's story-driven and scenario-based. We're going to immerse the person in a choose-your-own-adventure story. They're going to make choices, and they're going to see the consequences. So this results in a much more engaging deliverable. If you've seen the 20-plus e-learning examples video, you've already seen me walk through some of these. I'll cite some more videos later, but we have plenty of examples you can see of what this final deliverable looks like. Again, we're designing a simulation that lets people practice making choices in a risk-free environment. So we want to simulate the job that they'll be performing, but when they make mistakes here, it's not actually affecting anyone poorly in the real world. They're just going to see the consequences, and hopefully they will be very memorable, so then when they are in the real world, they won't make the same mistake. And the biggest benefit here is that this approach shows off your full command of the instructional design process, and it results in an engaging portfolio-worthy deliverable. Okay, so it checks a lot of the right boxes. It keeps hiring managers, potential clients, and just a general audience engaged, right? So it's just a nice deliverable on that front, but it also walks through how you identify the idea using this analysis we're going to get into, and then how you create an action map, write a storyboard, do visual mock-ups. We go through this whole process in my How to Design Effective E-Learning video, and we're building a whole playlist around that. This is one part of that playlist. So if you haven't checked out that video, make sure you do. Maybe bookmark it, open it up in another window. I'll link it beneath this. But that brings you from this, identifying the idea, that will bring you much deeper into the rest of the process to bring it all to life. Okay, so here are the series of questions that we'll ask ourselves to identify the really strong flagship project idea. And maybe get out a notebook here, maybe take note of this timestamp because you might want to go through this a couple of times until you get this right. So the first thing we need to figure out is who is the audience that we're designing a solution for? Because that's a big benefit of this too, and perhaps the most important one. We're looking at how to solve a real world problem with instructional design. We're not just choosing a topic like, oh yeah, how to make a sandwich or, how to do something else. We're starting with a problem. Okay, so who is the audience? And to identify the audience, I would suggest thinking of past job roles that you've held or that someone close to you have held. Because the expertise is the most important thing here. We are going to be drawing on real world examples to make the experience more immersive. So again, we're going to present common mistakes that people make as possible distractors to these questions we'll ask. When someone makes a mistake, we want to actually tell the story about what would happen in the real world to make it more memorable. It's a lot more difficult to do this if you're just relying on Google searches. So easiest place to draw from is your own experience. Maybe you're a teacher. What problems do teachers face? Well, we haven't even gotten into that yet, but think about the job roles you've had. Maybe make a list of job roles that you've held. Maybe your partner holds. Maybe one of your parents hold. Someone who you can get on a call with and they're happy to work through this stuff with you because you will need to rely on that expertise throughout this process. Okay, next up, what is the problem that people in this role are facing? Okay, so what are people doing or not doing that's causing a problem at the workplace or organization? And it's particularly the people in this audience that you've identified. So that's why we need someone with that expertise. If you've been working in that role, you've probably seen the problems that people are facing. Okay, so are people in this role making common mistakes? Are they confused around a particular topic? Are they not following a process effectively? These are all questions that you can either ask yourself or ask your subject matter expert, who would be your partner, your friend, your family member who has this role that you may be focusing on. The best problems for this approach are related to soft skills or processes. Again, we're designing this scenario-based simulation. We want to focus on decision making. So soft skills and processes, very good for this type of solution. And you can see plenty of examples of this in the showcase for inspiration. We'll link to that a little bit later. But once we've identified, okay, who are we designing a solution for? What are the problems that they are facing? What are the mistakes they're making? Then we need to figure out, okay, are they making these mistakes or performing this way because of a lack of knowledge or skill? Remember, you may have seen my videos on this channel about what types of problems instructional designers solve, but we're here to solve gaps in knowledge or skill. If there's no gap in knowledge or skill, if they're having that problem because of something else, like maybe an environmental issue, then we don't need a learning solution and we may not need an instructional designer. So this is the line of questioning you'll need to go through with each of these audiences, each of these performance problems you identify. We need to go through this and maybe we'll find out, like at this question, maybe this isn't the best idea, then we start over. So go through this as many times as you need to. We still have more questions because the next question after that is the problem even worth solving? Okay, how is the performance problem affecting the organization? Or if this is a social problem, some people want to design a solution for a more general audience, like for the general public. So if we're designing a solution to a social problem, how is it affecting humanity? Right? We want to make sure that this isn't just like an inconsequential problem, because then we're probably not going to want to spend thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a learning solution. Right? So we want to make sure the problem is worth solving. And this is the question. Are the consequences of this problem worth the cost and effort of a solution? So just try to answer this for yourself for this problem, because if it's not worth it, then probably not going to make a good portfolio project, because you won't be able to justify the solution when you're talking about it in an interview or in your write-up. Once we've gotten this far, we can probably identify who the client is pretty easily. So which organization would pay for a solution to this problem? Right, and try to describe them as specifically as you can, even if it's a concept project. Getting this client really clear in your mind can just help how you frame this, how you think about it, because you want to think about this as a real instructional designer. Like if you have no experience, treat this like a real client, even though it's a concept project. So it'll just be a good way to get practice, build your confidence solving real problems with instructional design. So then when it does come time to talk about this in an interview or even do it on the job, you should be feeling much more confident. And then we need to consider the potential solutions. Okay, so will a learning solution even help? If it's caused by a lack of knowledge or skill, then the answer to this should be yes. Does an e-learning solution make sense? So e-learning is best for large audiences that have different schedules or are geographically dispersed. If we're designing an e-learning solution for 6 people who all work in the same office, probably would make more sense to do something face-to-face or not invest thousands of dollars in self-paced e-learning. Self-paced e-learning is best when we need that scalability, right? Because it takes more effort up front to design self-paced e-learning, but then we can roll it out to millions of people around the globe, and it doesn't take much more effort. Okay, so that's the benefit. We want to make sure we need that scale with this audience. And then will practice in a self-paced online environment help? If we need someone to practice kicking football or pronouncing something with a specific dialect, it may be a little bit more difficult to practice that in a self-paced e-learning environment, right? Because people may not get the feedback that they need as if they had a coach working with them in real time. Or if you need to practice kicking a football, the best way to practice that is to actually be out on a field kicking it. So keep that in mind too. This is best for decision making. And then are there non-learning solutions? So this is just a good way to kind of exercise your analysis skills as an instructional designer. Very rarely is a learning solution all that's needed. Okay, maybe there are also environmental concerns. Maybe the managers also need a learning solution, not just the people we're focusing on. So it may be good just as a thought exercise to identify here are other solutions that could help solve this problem. We're going to design and develop this one piece of it, but you could talk about in your write-up the other pieces that could help. And this could make for a good conversation piece in interviews as well, just to kind of show off your higher level thinking as a performance consultant or instructional designer. All right, so that is the flagship project process. I know that's a lot. I did want to put all of this out there though, just to give people this framework for identifying these project ideas. Go through it a few times if you need to, but I really look forward to seeing projects you create with this process. Let's dive into the supporting projects now. These are much more focused and shorter, I would say. So the supporting projects, I think 2 of these is a good number to aim for. These show off a more specialized skill set within the instructional design space. Okay, so where the flagship project just kind of checks all the right boxes. It shows that you can do performance consulting, e-learning development, visual design, writing storyboards. Again, check out the How to Design Effective E-Learning video to see like how we get into all of that stuff from this idea. But supporting projects can just show off one specific piece of that. Here are some examples. Maybe you will really like the analysis side. Your supporting projects can be needs assessments. Or they can be storyboards if you really want to do storyboard work. They can be animated videos, scripts, job aids, visual mock-ups, evaluation case studies. So you get the idea. If there's a specific part of instructional design that you're interested in and that you would like to work in, use your supporting projects to demonstrate that and to show off that specialization. If you just want to land a corporate role and you don't really care to have a specialized skill set, a safe and effective choice is visually appealing storyline projects. Okay, so ones that are showing off these development skills, those have been proving pretty effective on the market right now for most corporate roles. So again, that's not what all of instructional design is about, but you can go a pretty far way with some nice storyline skills and some visual design skills. You need writing skills too. It would be helpful if you can talk about the analysis and all of that, but there is no denying that this is very effective in the corporate market right now. So if you're not sure where to start, aim for storyline projects. And then you can see plenty of examples of supporting projects and flagship projects on devlinpeck.com/showcase. This shows off all of the portfolios that have been coming from the bootcamp. And again, that's the content I'm sharing here with you all as well. So seeing those examples should definitely help. All right, so we're getting to the end now. We also need to complete write-ups for each project. So the final deliverable is only 50% of the portfolio project. So say you identify this flagship project idea and then you go ahead and develop it all out and you have this really nice e-learning simulation. You don't just want to like drop a link to that on your portfolio site. You want to link to a process write-up. And this is where you say, here's the name of the project. Here is why I'm even working on this project, because here's the problem we're intending to solve with it. Here are the roles and responsibilities that I've held to bring this project to life, and here are the potential results that we've produced. And then from that page, that's where you have a link to experience the full project and you link out to it. You'll see examples of this in the showcase, but remember that write-up, that is not something you want to skip. You don't want someone to have any questions about what role you played in this. You don't want them to assume, oh, maybe they just did the development and someone else did all of the writing and graphics. You want to be very clear about what role you played. Okay, yeah, so you need to create this write-up, and this outlines the problem you're solving, the roles you held, and the process that you followed to design the solution. So this is where you tell the story of your project. Bring us along with you. Let us see everything you did to bring this to life. Let us see your decision-making, your thought process. This will really build your credibility as an instructional designer with a potential client or hiring manager. Okay, so let's wrap it up now. I have a few final recommendations for identifying these project ideas. First, include at least one project that solves a real-world problem with your ID skills. This is so important on a portfolio. It will really set you apart from those portfolios that just have only storyline projects. This eliminates a lot of the competition when you can show off this higher-level instructional design thinking. If you can do this for all 3 of your portfolio projects, even better. And I should mention about that, a lot of people find success after having just that one flagship project on their portfolio site. That goes a long way, so definitely check out that How to Design Effective eLearning video, because if you get that up on a portfolio site, your prospects will be looking pretty good when it comes to corporate ID roles or even freelance work. But if you can incorporate that, like identifying these real-world problems you're solving for your supporting projects, even better. This is important too. Create projects that are similar to the type of work you'd like to do. Again, if you know you want to focus on storyboarding, use your supporting projects to emphasize that. If you know for a fact, like you don't ever want to touch an e-learning development tool, maybe you don't even do the traditional flagship project process I lay out where it has you develop it in Storyline. Again, you'll have much more limited prospects, but there are some more specialized roles out there. And if your portfolio just demonstrates that specialized skill perfectly, may not be a bad idea if you're pretty good at that type of work. If you are aiming for a corporate ID role and you want to land it relatively soon, I would suggest creating at least one self-paced e-learning project, particularly with Articulate Storyline 360. I mean, that tool is like leading the market right now for demand and just like ease of use for self-paced e-learning authoring tools. So right now, Articulate Storyline 360, very safe project to include in your portfolio, stuff built with that tool just because of the demand for it. And then again, aim for 3 projects total, but once you get that flagship project in your portfolio site, you can start applying and then you can just work on those supporting projects as you're going through the application process. So that's all I have for you in this video. Hopefully this helps. I see this question all the time. Let me know in the comments if this did help you get some ideas, or if you have some ideas and you want to get some feedback from the community. Again, share it in the comments, try to help out each other. Let's use this space to do some workshopping if we want. And once you have a decent idea, go and check out the How to Design Effective eLearning video, because that will bring you the rest of the way and it will hopefully get you all creating some really impressive projects and landing some really nice opportunities. So, thanks again. If you do have any questions, let me know in the comments and I will see you in the next video.